Stop, wherever you are right now, whatever you had running in the background, whatever your mind was already moving toward before this found you today, pause it, set it aside. What I am about to say to you is not something to half listen to. This is not background. This is not ambient noise you absorb while doing something else. This is a message that was placed in front of you today for a reason that goes beyond what you can fully explain, and it requires your presence for just a little while. So, wherever you are, just be here. Chosen one, you have carried something for a very long time. Not just difficulty, not just hardship. A specific, sustained, sometimes incomprehensible weight that went on longer than you thought possible, and changed you in places you didn't notice were changing until you looked back one day and realized the person you were before that season no longer exists. That season is complete. I am not asking you to believe that yet. I am asking you to do only one thing. Stay. Stay long enough to hear what I need to tell you, because what I am bringing to you today is not a promise about something approaching. It is a declaration about something that has already been sealed, finished, done. You did not arrive here by accident. Something that has known your name through every single day of that difficult season placed these exact words in your path today, because this is the hour your understanding is meant to open. By the time you reach the end of what I am about to share, you will not simply know that it is over. You will understand why it had to be exactly as long and as hard as it was. You will see clearly who you became inside of it, and you will know with a certainty that does not require your circumstances to confirm that you will never have to go through that again. Stay. Now, let me start by telling you something that nobody probably said to you while you were in the middle of what you were going through. Nobody told you what those specific, strange, hard-to-name feelings actually meant. They just told you to hold on. They told you to keep going. They told you something was coming. And sometimes that helped, and sometimes it didn't. And mostly, what you carried in the particular kind of alone that only the person inside the storm knows, even when other people are standing right there. Even when you were in the same room as someone who loved you. Even then, there was something about the depth of it that you could never quite get across. So let me try to name some things. Have you noticed that things you used to tolerate just fine now feel almost unbearable? Conversations that used to pass through you without leaving a mark now feel hollow, draining, like something in you recoils the moment the energy hits wrong. Environments that once felt normal now feel like they belong to a version of your life you have already outgrown. Situations that would have gone unnoticed before now leave a residue, a feeling like something scraped against something true inside you, and you cannot quite explain why, except that something has shifted so fundamentally that the old containers no longer hold. That is not impatience. That is not you becoming difficult or oversensitive. That is a sign. And have you noticed the emotional waves? The ones that arrive without a clear trigger. A wave of peace from nowhere, unexpected, almost suspicious, followed by a grief that makes no logical sense, followed by something quiet and fragile that might be hope, but you don't want to reach for it too fast because you have been here before, and the fall afterward was hard. No obvious cause, no identifiable source, just deep movement, like something massive shifting far below the surface where you can barely feel it, only sense it. That is not instability. That is another sign. And there is this, the strange quiet that has begun to settle inside you. A quiet that your nervous system almost doesn't know what to do with because you have been running on urgency for so long. The urgency to prove something. The urgency to make something happen on a timeline that would satisfy the part of you that needed evidence things were moving. The urgency to be understood, to explain yourself, to get someone to acknowledge what you were carrying. And then, almost without you choosing it, That urgency lessened. The need to perform the process, to announce the journey, to get someone to witness the difficulty before you would let yourself take it seriously, it just got quieter. Not because you stopped caring, because something in you settled into a knowing that no longer required an audience. That is not indifference. That is not you giving up. That is the deepest sign of all. And some of you have been having the strangest dreams. Not chaos, not fear dreams. Dreams of doorways. Dreams of being at the edge of something vast and unfamiliar, and instead of the old anxiety, something closer to readiness. Dreams that leave you with a sensation when you wake up, not urgency, but a settled conviction that something is about to change. Just because nobody saw it, just because you moved through your days carrying the full weight of it, and the people around you never quite grasped the depth of what you were navigating, just because you never fully got to say it out loud, in a way that landed just because the grief had no clean name. And so you learned to fold it quietly into the daily routine of being a person. None of that means it was invisible to the one who matters most. None of that means the work of that season went unaccounted for. I'll come back to that. I promise I will come back to it. But first, I want to answer a question you may not have even known you were carrying. Why did the season last that long? Not weeks, not a rough patch. The real kind of long, the kind that reforms a person slowly and completely, in ways they cannot explain, because the transformation happened too deep and too gradually to observe in real time. You didn't notice you were changing. You just noticed, eventually, that you were different. Why that specific length? Why that specific depth? Why not sooner? Why not gentler? I need you to stay close for this part, because the answer to that question is going to change how you see everything you've been through. Most people explain a hard season one of two ways. Either something went wrong and they are being corrected, or they did something wrong and they are being punished. And when neither of those explanations fits, when you look honestly at the season and you can't land it in either of those categories, the hard season starts to feel like a glitch, like the plan broke down somewhere and nobody has fixed it yet. But there is a third explanation that almost no one talks about, and it is the truest one. The hard season was not a correction, it was not a punishment. It was a construction site, and you cannot rush a construction site. You cannot speed up the curing of concrete. You cannot compress the time it takes for a foundation to become solid enough to bear the weight of what is going to be placed on top of it. You cannot force the setting of something that needs to set on its own terms, in its own time, under the right conditions. What looked like stagnation was actually construction. What looked like abandonment was actually enclosure, the specific kind of protective enclosure that lets something form without interference, without premature exposure, without the weight of the outside world pressing in before the structure was ready. What looked like silence was actually the sound of things being built underground, where no eye could monitor them, where no timeline could rush them, where the work could proceed exactly as it needed to. That is what was happening to you. Think about Joseph for a moment, not as a religious story at a comfortable distance. Think about him as a real person. A young man with a genuine sense of where he was going, and then one afternoon, everything dismantled. The pit was not symbolic. It was a real hole in the ground, and he went into it as one person and was pulled out of it as someone in motion towards something he could not yet see. And that pit, that specific, terrible, unchosen geography, was not accidental. It was a transit point. He had to be removed from where he was, from the environment, and the relationships, and the version of himself he had built in that environment, because none of those things could travel with him to where he was going. Every year that followed, every painful, slow, confusing year, every connection that seemed like it should have been the door and turned out not to be. Every morning, in Potiphar's house that felt like delay. Every day in that prison that felt like the story had simply stopped. Each one was building something in him, specifically and intentionally, that a man who went directly from vision to palace would never have had. The patience that only forms under sustained uncertainty. The compassion for suffering that can only be born from having truly suffered. The capacity to hold power without being consumed by it, which only comes from having held powerlessness with integrity. He wasn't in prison waiting for his life to begin. He was in prison becoming the man who could hold what he was about to be given. And here is the hardest truth I want to give you today. The season was exactly as long as it needed to be. Not too long. Not a mistake in the plan. Not evidence that you are somehow less chosen, less seen, less intended for something. Exactly as long as it needed to be to build exactly what was needed in the person who is going to carry what is coming next. Not one day was wasted. Not one unanswered prayer. Not one morning that felt like it was repeating itself for no reason. All of it counted. All of it was counted. But here is what I haven't told you yet. There is something else that was happening during that season. Something that was not just happening around you or to your circumstances, but happening inside the person you were becoming through every single difficult day. And that is the part I really want to get to, because it is the most important thing I will say today. But before we go there, hold this image for a moment. The hardest contractions come right before arrival. In the natural process of birth, the most intense, most overwhelming pressure comes not at the beginning of labor, but at the end of it. Right before something new enters the world, the pressure reaches a kind of peak that makes the preceding hours feel almost manageable by comparison. And most people in the middle of that final, hardest push read the intensity as disaster. They read it as evidence that something is going wrong. They brace for loss when what is actually happening is arrival. Hold that image. We are going to need it. Let me ask you something. When you try to picture the version of yourself who entered the hard season, the one who was standing at the beginning of it, not knowing what was coming, do you fully recognize that person? Because I want you to look carefully. Not at what your life looks like from the outside right now. Not at your circumstances, which may still carry the marks of the season you just came through. I want you to look at the interior, the actual landscape of who you are, in the places that don't show up in the visible story of your life. Because something happened in there while you were surviving what was happening out there. And most people walk out of their hard seasons without ever fully understanding what was built in them during it. If you leave without understanding that, you leave the most valuable thing behind. So, let me name it for you. You are more discerning than you were. And I don't mean wary. I don't mean closed off. I mean, you now carry an interior compass that reads people and situations at a depth your earlier self simply didn't have access to. You can sense the quality of a room before a word is spoken. You can feel the gap between what someone is presenting and what is actually true in them, not always consciously, but accurately, with a consistency that you've noticed, even if you haven't named it. That ability was not with you when you entered the season. It was forged inside the season through the long, grinding work of navigating difficulty without a reliable guide. You are more grounded than you were. And I mean this in a very specific way. You have now been shaken genuinely, not theoretically shaken, and you discovered something in the shaking that no easier road would have taught you. You found out that being shaken is not the same as collapsing. You held things that felt like they should have destroyed you, and they didn't, not because you are invincible, but because you found out what you are actually made of. That knowledge is now in your bones. It is not something anyone can talk you out of. It is experiential. It is yours. You have learned to live at peace with uncertainty, in a way most people never do. Most people need to know before they can settle. They need the outcome confirmed, the path clear, the future visible before they can breathe without bracing. But you, through the long season of holding questions that had no clean answers, of taking the next step without being able to see the one after it, you learned something rare. You learned how to be steady in the middle of unresolved things. How to function in the fog without the fog defeating you. That is not a common capability. Most people spend their entire lives without developing it. You have become precise in your relationships. The season removed something that was never truly nourishing, the connections built on shared history, but not on shared substance. The intimacies that were comfortable but not real, the presence of people who were physically close, but fundamentally unreachable. And in the clearing that followed, something clarified. You know now, with a specificity that occasionally startles even you, the difference between what is genuine and what is performance. You are done requiring yourself to pretend otherwise. And then there is this. You learned to endure in silence, not the silence of resignation, the silence of a person who no longer needs their process to be witnessed in order to take it seriously. You learned how to keep going when no one was watching, and no one was applauding, and no one understood what you were carrying. You learned how to stay faithful to something without external confirmation that it mattered. That is one of the rarest things a human being can carry, and you carry it now. I want to pause here for a moment and give you something that I believe will root everything I've just named into something even deeper. There is a word in the original Hebrew, the language underneath some of the oldest spiritual texts we have, and the word is tamam. When most people hear the phrase, "it is done," or "it is finished," or "it is over," they hear cessation. They hear a stop, a halt, something coming to an end. But tamam does not mean stopped. Tamam means complete, whole, arrived at the state of fullness that was always the intention. The distinction matters more than it might seem. There is a difference between a building that was abandoned in the middle of construction and a building that just received its final beam. Both of them are no longer being built. But only one of them is done. Only one of them is structurally whole. Only one of them is ready for what it was designed to hold. When a builder steps back from the second one and says, "it is done," he is not announcing a loss. He is announcing a completion. He is announcing that what was meant to be built has been built, and it is exactly what it was supposed to be. That is what tamam means over your season. Not it stopped, not it paused, not we are taking a break from this for now. Complete, whole, built to its intended fullness, done. And I hear the Spirit saying this over you today. I want you to let this land and not rush past it. I saw every single day. Not one of them was invisible to me. What you thought I had missed, I had counted. What you thought I had forgotten, I was forming. You did not endure a single hour of that without my presence in it. And every day served exactly the purpose I designed it to serve. Now, I want to tell you about David, because David's story does something that Joseph's doesn't. It shows us what happens in the space between the moment of anointing and the moment of coronation, and why that space is not a delay. It is a requirement. David was anointed king while he was still a shepherd boy. The prophet came, the oil was poured, the declaration was spoken over him. And then David went back to the sheep, not to the palace, not to preparation for the throne, back to the field, back to the ordinary work, back to a life that from the outside looked entirely unchanged by what had just happened. And for years after that, he moved through things that had nothing obvious to do with becoming a king. He killed a lion, he killed a bear. He stood in front of Goliath when trained soldiers stood back. He served faithfully under a king who was trying to have him killed. He lived in caves. He ran. He was misread by people who should have seen him clearly. And through all of it, he remained quiet, faithful, present, doing the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. Those years were not a delay in David's becoming king. They were the formation of the specific kind of king David was designed to be. A king who had shepherded the helpless, knew what it was to carry those who could not carry themselves. A king who had lived in caves, knew what it was to be afraid and to keep going anyway. A king who had been faithful without an audience to witness the faithfulness, knew how to lead without requiring the crown to make it real. The palace could not have built what the wilderness built. The throne room could not have produced what the hiding places produced. The hidden years were not the preamble to his story. They were the center of it. Now here is what I want you to understand, and I need you to really let this in. The same is true of what you have been walking through. The child does not know it is about to be born. It only knows the pressure. And in that pressure, something permanent is happening. Something forming and filling and completing itself that will only become fully visible on the other side. And what you are standing at right now, whether you feel it clearly or not, is the other side. The years you have been calling the delay were the formation. The years you have been calling the waiting were the preparation. The years that felt like they were happening outside of your actual life, peripheral, hidden, invisible to anyone who wasn't paying close attention. Those were the years when the most important work was being done, and that work is now complete. I want to say something now about what is beginning to reorganize around you, not just inside you, but in your relationships, in your sense of purpose, in the area of provision and resource, because there is a pattern to how this unfolds, and there are specific things about it that I need you to understand. There are things I want to warn you not to do when you see it starting to move. I'm going to go into all of that in full in what comes next, because it matters that you are prepared. But before I get there, there is something I need to mention. A scientist named Dr. Robert Lake, someone who spent over 3 decades at the intersection of neuroscience and human potential, and whose broader body of research touched on things from cognitive restoration to what eventually became compiled in work like The Youthful Brain, became focused on a very specific question. What happens to the brain under prolonged difficulty? Not philosophically, measurably. What happens to the specific frequency states that govern a person's capacity for clarity, for intuition, for the ability to perceive possibility rather than only threat, when that person spends years navigating the kind of sustained survival pressure you have been under? He and researchers at MIT, Princeton, and several other leading institutions found something that I think you need to hear. They gave it a name. They called it the decline effect. I am going to come back to this. I am going to explain exactly what they found, what it means for where you are right now, and why it is more relevant to your story than you might expect. For now, hold that name, because the most important thing I have left to say today is coming, and it is about something that is larger than your own healing, larger than your own restoration, larger than the relief of a long season finally being over. It is about the reason, the specific things that were built in you during that season, the discernment, the groundedness, the capacity to carry silence, the precision in what is real and what is not. It is about the reason those things were not only built for you, they were built for someone else as well. I want to tell you something about the people who are waiting for you, not the people who are waiting for your circumstances to look better before they feel comfortable around you again, not the ones who will show up when the evidence arrives. I am talking about specific people, people you may not have met yet, who are somewhere in the middle of the exact kind of season you just walked through, and who are going to need someone who knows that terrain from the inside. They are going to need someone who did not just read about that kind of darkness from a safe distance, did not just survive a week of it and emerge with a clean story. They are going to need someone who went all the way through, someone who learned the specific vocabulary of that particular experience, someone who can sit in the room with them and not flinch, not rush them, not need them to be okay before they actually are. That is you. The discernment you built during that season did not grow in you only for your own benefit, and that is not random. The relational precision, the ability to recognize what is real underneath what is presented, the capacity to hold someone in their process without needing them to perform recovery for your comfort, that formed in you. Because there are people coming whose lives will be different because of what you can now see. And that is not random. The specific length of your season, the specific shape of what it cost you, the specific attributes that hardship built, in the specific order it built them. It matches a need that is waiting somewhere ahead of you, and that is not random. The timing of this word reaching you today, at this exact point in your story, and not a month earlier or a year later, and that is not random. Now let me tell you what is beginning to reorganize in the 3 areas you are most likely to notice it first. The first area is your relationships. Some people who felt like permanent fixtures in your life are going to move. I want to be honest with you about that, because understanding the reason does not make it painless, and I am not going to pretend it does. It will feel like loss, even when what is actually happening is a release. It will feel like rejection, even when what is actually happening is a redirection. The people who are moving did not fail. They were present for the season they were present for, and that season is complete. And not every connection is designed to cross every threshold. What you will feel during this is real grief, and you are allowed to feel it fully. But here is what not to do. Do not try to hold what is already in the process of releasing. Do not attempt to force a connection to remain that has already served its purpose in your story. That attempt will cost you more energy than the letting go will. And here is what to trust. The connections that are forming next will carry a quality the old ones could not. You are going to begin encountering people who speak a language you developed over the last few years, a language you had no one to speak it to before, and they will speak it back to you. And you will know, without needing to think about it too hard, that something different has begun. The second area is your purpose. The sense of calling that has been more like a distant shape in the fog than a clear path is beginning to sharpen, not into an overwhelming mandate that you need to execute perfectly by next week, into a specific, livable clarity about what your next actual step is. And what you are going to feel when that clarity begins to arrive is a mix of something like excitement and something that is wearing the clothes of fear. That is not a stop sign. That fear is the weight of something real. And something real carries weight. And the fact that you can feel the weight is not evidence that you are unready. It is evidence that you understand what you are being handed. The people who crashed and burned after big callings were usually the ones who felt nothing. Your healthy fear is what proves that you are paying attention, what not to do. Do not let the sensation of weight become the reason you stay in place when something in you is being clearly called forward. The clarity will continue to deepen as you move. You will not receive the full view before you take the step. You will receive enough light for the step you are on, and then the next light will arrive. The third area is provision and resource. Doors that were structurally inaccessible during the season, doors you pushed and found solidly closed, not because you were doing anything wrong, but because the season had not yet completed, are becoming available. Things are beginning to shift that have been still for a long time. And when they do, pay attention to what happens inside you in response. Because there is a voice that I need to talk about directly in a moment, and it will likely show up right at the point when provision begins to arrive. I am going to name it, and I need you to know it by name, because the ability to distinguish that voice from actual wisdom is one of the most important skills you are going to need in the season that is beginning. But first, I want to give you an image. The phoenix does not know it is a phoenix while it is burning. That is the part most people leave out of the story. It only knows the heat and the dissolution and the experience of losing what it was. It does not have access to the understanding that it is not dying in the way it fears, that it is being rebuilt into something the old form could never have been. That understanding only arrives in the rising. Only when it lifts from the ashes and discovers that what the fire produced was not a lesser version of what entered it, but something the fire alone could make. You are at the rising, not at the beginning, not in the middle, at the rising, where the confusion is different from the confusion of the fire, not the confusion of loss, but the confusion of becoming something you have not yet learned to inhabit. I want to tell you about someone. I will not use a name, because their story is still unfolding, and not all of it is mine to tell. But this is what I can say. For 7 years, this person experienced what he later described as a systematic stripping, not of one thing, of everything at once, in overlapping waves that came before the previous wave had finished. A career that had taken more than a decade to build, dismantled in a single quarter. A relationship he had believed was the foundation of his adult life, revealed itself to be conditional in a way that had been invisible to him until the conditions changed. A community he had built and served for years, scattered when the circumstances that had held it together stopped being met. He said that the most accurate description he could give of those years was that he was being reduced to the one layer of himself that nothing could strip the part that was simply, stubbornly, still present. He did not move through it gracefully. It took years. And somewhere in the middle of those years, he found himself in a series of conversations with others who had walked similar roads, and in those conversations, he encountered a small constellation of things that helped support what he called the cognitive restoration the season had made necessary. He mentioned in passing, not as a recommendation but almost incidentally, that some of what helped came from Dr. Lake's broader body of work, a later piece of it, something he called neuroactive, though he rarely discussed the specifics. What he kept returning to was simpler than any specific tool, the willingness to believe, before any evidence confirmed it, that the season was ending. That was the first step. Everything else was what followed the first step. On the first day of his 8th year, something shifted. A call came from a direction entirely outside the map he had been working from, not from any door he had been pushing, not from any connection he had been cultivating, from somewhere he had never considered. And what began that day was not a restoration of what he had lost. It was something architecturally different, something that the man who entered that 7-year season could not have held without it breaking him in the wrong direction. Not because he was insufficient then, because the season had to make him into someone who could carry it without being reshaped by it. He said this once, and it stayed with me. He said, "I did not waste 7 years. I spent 7 years becoming someone who could not be wasted." And before we go further, I want to say one thing, and I want you to hold it close. Stay with this message until the very end, because what I am about to speak over your life before we close today is the reason this word found you right now, and not a week from now or a month from now. Stay. Now, there is something standing between you and the full entrance into what has been declared complete, and I want to address it directly, because ignoring it does not make it stop operating. The first thing is what I am going to call the disbelief reflex. It is not cynicism. It is not a lack of faith. It is an intelligence pattern your nervous system developed to protect you after an extended period of difficulty. And it works like this. After enough cycles of hoping and then being disappointed, the part of your brain that is responsible for your safety begins to treat incoming good news as a potential threat. It does not do this to harm you. It does this because it learned that hope, without careful management, has a cost, and it has been trying, in its limited way, to protect you from that cost. The disbelief reflex sounds like, "This is too convenient. Something must be wrong with this. I have felt this before, and it did not hold. This is not the kind of thing that actually happens for people like me." You need to know that voice by name, because the moment you can name it, you can stop treating it as wisdom and start treating it as the protection pattern. It is intelligent, understandable, and now outdated. The second thing is the threshold panic. This one is quieter and in some ways more dangerous because it does not feel like fear. It feels like a sudden impulse to introduce friction into something that is working to pull back at the moment. Things are moving forward, to find the problem in the solution, to complicate what was becoming simple. If you have ever watched yourself get close to something you genuinely wanted and then somehow managed to unravel it, not through bad luck but through something you did, you already know what this is. Difficulty has become familiar. And familiar, to a nervous system that is trying to keep you safe, can feel like safe even when it is not. The threshold panic is the attempt to return to familiar when unfamiliar things begin to arrive. Here is a practice for this moment. I am going to call it the identity refresh. When you notice yourself in the middle of a response that feels like it is pulling away from the new season, pause and run these 3 questions internally. Ask yourself, is this coming from who I was in the hard season or from who I am now that it is complete? Is this the disbelief reflex, or is this actual discernment about something genuinely worth examining? And if I were fully standing in the identity of what the hard season built in me, what would I do right now? Those 3 questions will not always give you an instant answer, but they will create enough space between the automatic pattern and your actual response that the real you can weigh in before the old you makes the decision. Now, I want to say something to you, and I want you to receive it, not just process it. You are allowed to step into your new season without explaining yourself to everyone who knew you inside the old one. You are allowed to stop bracing, even when everything in your body still wants to brace. You are allowed to receive good things without immediately auditing them for the catch. You are allowed to let the connections that belong to this season arrive without pushing them to prove themselves before they have had a chance to breathe. You are allowed to inhabit the identity that the hard season built without apologizing for how different it is from who you were before. You are allowed to be done with what is already done. And you are allowed to leave the hard season behind, not as an act of forgetting, but as an act of honoring it fully by refusing to carry it past its own completion date. Leaving is not ingratitude. Leaving is the point. The labor was not the punishment. The labor was the mechanism. What it produced is not diminished by what it cost. It is defined by it. And what has been produced in you is something no easier path could have made. The most important truth I have left is this. Everything I have told you today, the purpose of the wilderness, the things that were built in you inside it, the people you were being prepared for, the areas of your life that are beginning to reorganize around the completed work, all of it is the explanation for a single declaration. And that declaration is this: it is done. Not almost done, not in process, not approaching completion. Done, tamam, whole, to its fullness, in the way that a thing can only be called whole when every piece of what it was meant to contain has been placed inside it and the structure is ready to be inhabited. Everything I said in the first part of what we walked through today pointed to this. The season was not an accident, it was a construction site. And now, the construction is complete. Everything I shared about what formed in you during it, the discernment, the groundedness, the relational precision, the ability to hold peace in uncertainty, the capacity to carry something in silence pointed to this. The work produced exactly what it was sent to produce. And everything I shared about the people waiting for what you now carry, about the 3 areas beginning to reorganize, about the purpose that is sharpening into clarity, all of it pointed to this. The completion is not just an ending, it is an authorization. You have been cleared to step forward. And I hear the Father declaring this over you today. I want you to receive this without rushing past it. It is I who is saying, it is done. Not your circumstances, not the evidence that you can see yet. I am the one holding the seal. I am the one who completed the work. And what I have declared complete, what I have sealed from the place where your future is already written, no doubt, no delay, no voice that says not yet. Nothing that has a name or does not have a name can reopen. You are complete. Now go, and do not look back. You are the cycle breaker, the one who ends in your generation what was never supposed to continue, who walks away from the patterns that came before you and does not hand them forward. You are the spiritual warrior, the one who held ground when everything and everyone around you said there was no ground to hold, and who is still standing because of what holding that ground produced in you. You are the wounded healer, the one whose specific pain has become specific medicine, who carries the answer to a question that the people coming toward you have been living inside of, and who can reach them because you know that terrain from the inside. You are the voice, the one being formed in the silence you thought was abandonment, the one who is about to speak things that others have been feeling but have not been able to put into words. You are the deliverer. You did not come here to find freedom for yourself alone. You came to create it, to open movement where there was no movement, to be the reason someone else gets out. You are committed. You are commissioned. You are sent. And here is a practice I want to give you before we go further, something to carry from today. I am going to call it the completion seal practice. It is a simple declaration, and I want you to say it internally right now, not out loud, but in the part of you that actually believes things, just internally, clearly. I release the old season. I receive the new season. I step fully into who I became. And the threshold protocol, the actual practice of crossing over, has 3 movements. First, name one thing from the old season that you are choosing to set down today. Not to dismiss it, not to deny it cost you something real, but to put it down consciously rather than carrying it forward by default. Second, name one thing that the hard season built in you that you are choosing to bring with you. One attribute, one knowing, one permanent change that belongs to who you are now. And third, take one actual step, even a small one, that belongs to the new season rather than the old. Something you have been waiting to do until things felt more certain. Do that one thing, knowing that certainty comes after the first step, not before it. Now, there is something I want to address before we close today, and I want to do it with full honesty because I think it belongs to this conversation. We talked earlier about Dr. Robert Lake and about the decline effect, about what researchers at MIT and Princeton found when they studied what prolonged difficulty does to the specific frequency states in the brain. Let me close that loop now. What they found, across thousands of documented cases, is that the brainwave state most associated with clarity, intuition, creative problem solving, and the ability to perceive possibility rather than only threat, A state called gamma naturally declines under sustained survival pressure, not permanently, but measurably and in ways that compound over time. Dr. Lake called this the decline effect, and here is why it matters for your specific story. You were not born with ordinary cognitive capacity. The research suggests that people who demonstrate the kind of deep empathy, pattern recognition, and sensitivity to meaning that characterizes the chosen one experience begin life with elevated gamma activity. It is not metaphorical, it is measurable, and it is the reason that, as a child, things may have come to you with a fluency and a clarity and an ease that somewhere along the way began to feel less available. Not because you lost something, because it was suppressed by the very conditions that also formed you. The distance between the person you were born to be and the person you have felt like in recent years is not a character flaw. It is the decline effect, doing exactly what it was documented to do. A woman who had spent years searching meditation, spiritual retreats, every path she could find toward genuine connection, described the first 2 weeks after she began working with the audio technology. Dr. Lake developed as the week the synchronicities started speaking again, not loudly, not dramatically, just present in the way they had been when she was young and had not yet been taught to explain them away. She said she stopped looking for the universe to show up because she started noticing that it already had. She said, "I was not broken. I was running on a suppressed signal. When the signal came back, I remembered who I was." What Dr. Lake created after 34 years of research is a 7-minute audio track that delivers, through a process called brain entrainment, the precise frequency pattern that guides the brain back into gamma state. Not forced, not manufactured, guided. The technology works from outside the brain, directly on frequency, which is a mechanistically different approach than anything that asks the brain to change itself through willpower or sustained practice. It has been verified through EEG studies at MIT, Princeton, and several other leading research institutions. The results are repeatable. I understand if you have tried things before that did not produce what they promised. The distinction I want to draw is one of mechanism. What you have tried before, meditation, breathwork, healing practices, asked your brain to change from within. This works differently. It delivers the frequency from the outside and lets the brain follow. That is not a superior or inferior approach. It is a different one, and it matches this specific moment in your journey in a way that I think is worth examining. The name of what Dr. Lake created is the Genius Song. For those who have been watching this specific message today, not on a general page, but here, in this specific space, the price Dr. Lake set is $39. Not $49, which is the standard rate, $39. His decision, made because he wanted the people who needed it most to be the ones who could access it. This price does not exist on Amazon, on Spotify, or through any search. It exists only through the link in the pinned comment and in the description below. A session with a biofeedback specialist who works with gamma frequency costs $300 per hour, and most practitioners recommend a minimum of 8 to 10 sessions before results are stable. Home equipment capable of delivering the same level of entrainment runs somewhere in the range of $7,000. What Dr. Lake compressed into a 7-minute audio track, and the 4 additional resources that come with it, including a track designed for children, a foundational book that the film The Secret drew from, a guided visualization, and a practice infographic, the total value of all of it, at $39, with a complete money-back guarantee that carries no conditions and no time limit, makes the risk of trying it exactly 0. The only risk that exists is the risk of not trying. And I want to say something honestly about the cost of waiting. Every day that Gamma remains suppressed is one more day that decisions that could be clearer feel heavier than they need to. One more day that the prayers that feel like they are almost landing somehow stop just before they do. One more day that the new season you have just been declared into is entered at reduced signal rather than full capacity. You do not have to make a decision today, but the version of you who does the one who is 3 months from now, looking back at this moment, already knows what choosing the first step here cost. The question is whether what you choose in the next few moments matches the declaration you just received. If any of this has resonated, if the connection between what the hard season did to your frequency and what restoration now makes possible landed somewhere real, the information is in the pinned comment. Go there if you feel led. Not because I am telling you to, because your spirit already knows whether this belongs to your next step. One more thing before we close today. Over the years, imitation tracks have appeared using the name Genius Song audio files, with none of the brain entrainment technology, no verified frequency work, no bonuses, and no guarantee. They produce nothing because there is nothing in them to produce. The only way to receive what 34 years of research produced, with the full technology, all 4 resources, and the guaranteed return policy, is through the link in the pinned comment and in the description, not through a search, not through any third-party platform, only there. Dr. Lake has spoken in the years since the Genius Song about what he calls the territory that opens after Gamma is restored, the place where recovered capacity meets intentional direction, where the person you were built to be begins to move in alignment with where you were always meant to go. He gave that work a name that I think says everything it needs to say. He called it Destiny's Embrace. That is a different conversation for a different day. What begins today is the signal, and the signal is enough to start with. Now, before we enter the final part of what I want to give you today, I want to offer you a simple practice to take into your daily life going forward, because the new season does not arrive all at once. It arrives one decision, one awareness, one small reorientation at a time. I am going to call this the frequency audit. It is simple, and it takes almost no time. When you notice that something in your life is draining you in a way that feels new, a relationship that used to feel fine and now leaves you depleted, an environment that once felt neutral and now feels like it belongs to someone you no longer fully are, mark it. Write it down if you can, or just note it internally. That is something that belongs to the old season, and it is asking to be released, not by forcing it out, but by beginning to reduce the amount of energy you route toward it. And when you notice something pulling at you in a way that feels like it is coming from somewhere new, an idea, a direction, a person, an opportunity that resonates with who you are now rather than who you were, mark that too. Move toward it, even slightly, even cautiously. That is where the new season is. Old season energy goes in one direction, new season energy pulls in another. The audit is simply the practice of learning to tell the difference, and letting what you learn slowly shift what you do. Now, right now, across this world in very different places, in very different circumstances, there are chosen ones who have been walking through the same kind of season you walked through. Not the same details, the same depth, the same length, the same experience of carrying something that had no clean name while the world around them continued as though nothing was happening beneath the surface of their ordinary days. And they are at the same threshold you are at today. Some of them are hearing this same word right now. And the fact that all of you are arriving at this threshold together is not a coincidence. It is a convergence. The kind that happens when a work that was being done in many different lives, all at once, comes to completion at approximately the same time. You are not alone in this. You never were. You just could not always see the others. If someone came to mind while you were listening today, someone who has been unusually quiet lately, someone who has gone a little bit internal in a way they cannot fully explain, someone who is going through a shift that is real but does not yet have language around it, this might be the word they have been waiting for. Send it to them. However, you need to send it. It could be the confirmation their spirit has been asking for and not yet received. And if something in you confirmed during this message that is done is true over your life, if something shifted when you heard that declaration, type "I receive" in the comments right now, not as a formality, as an act of claiming. Let the movement of your fingers be the first physical agreement with what your spirit has already received. And before this message ends today, before we enter the final declaration over your life gently, without any pressure, press the like on this message. Not as a favor to anyone, as a signal that sends this word into the path of someone else who needs it tonight. Someone is searching for exactly what you just received. Your agreement helps this reach them. Now I want to give you something to do before we close. Not outside yourself, inside. In your mind, I want you to picture a doorway. It does not need to be specific or elaborate, just a doorway. And you are standing directly in front of it. Behind you is the room you have been living in. You know this room. You know every corner of it. You know its particular quality of light and its particular weight in the air and the specific way it felt to spend long days inside it. It cost you something real to survive in that room, and it formed something in you that you are going to carry forward. Now, look at the doorway in front of you. The door is open, light is coming through it, and you cannot see the full shape of what is beyond it, and that is correct, because you were never promised a full view before the crossing. You were promised that the one who is already on the other side will be there when you arrive. Do not force yourself through. Do not perform a crossing you do not feel yet. Just notice what it is like to be standing at the threshold, with the room behind you and the open door in front of you, and the light coming through, and the knowing, quiet but real, that this is the exact place you are meant to be standing right now. When you are ready, and you are already ready, even if that readiness is small and fragile, that crossing is available to you, not in your imagination, in your actual life, in the decisions you will make in the days ahead. Now, let us close. With everything in you that is tired and relieved and hopeful and uncertain all at once, let us close this properly, because what you walked through deserves to be acknowledged before you walk away from it. And what you are walking toward deserves to be declared over you before you take your first full step. For every morning that you got up when you had no clear reason to, for every prayer that felt like it was going nowhere, but you sent it anyway, for every day you chose to stay faithful to something that could not yet give you back any visible confirmation, for every moment you chose honesty over performance and endurance over explanation. Thank you, not to me, to the source that held every single one of those days and kept the count that you thought no one was keeping. We are grateful. And the source saw every 3 am when you were the only one awake and you were still trying to believe something in the dark. It saw the grief that had no name, and so you carried it in silence rather than burden everyone around you with something you could not even fully articulate. It saw the moments when you almost stopped and you chose to continue anyway, not because you felt strong, but because something in you simply refused to be finished. It saw the faithfulness that no one applauded, the integrity that had no audience. The small, quiet, daily acts of holding on it saw everyone, every single one. Now we release. We release the weight of the old season, the full accumulated weight of years of carrying something heavy in the quiet. We release. We release the story that says the hard season was a punishment or a mistake or evidence that we were less chosen than others. We release. We release the belief that we have to earn what has already been given, that we have to prove our readiness before we are permitted to receive what was prepared for us. We release. We release every comparison to anyone else's timeline, every measuring of our own story against someone else's speed, someone else's visible progress, someone else's moment of arrival. We release. We release the ceiling, the old ceiling that told us how far was as far as someone like us gets to go. We release. We release the wound that became an identity, the pain that we held so long it started to feel like the most honest thing about us rather than one chapter in a longer story. We release. We release the fluency in survival, the unconscious assumption that because we learned how to endure difficult things are the only things we know how to live. We release. And we release every agreement, every quiet internal agreement that was made in a moment of pain, with unworthiness, with not yet, with not for me, with maybe someday but not now. Every one of them. We release. Now we activate. We call forward the full identity that was built in the hard season, not the identity we performed for others, not the identity we constructed to survive, but the one that the pressure actually produced. The cycle breaker who is done carrying what was never theirs to carry forward. The spiritual warrior who held ground when nothing visible confirmed that the ground was worth holding. The wounded healer whose specific scars carry specific medicine for specific people who are coming. The voice that was formed in the silence. The deliverer who did not come here to find freedom and stop there. We activate those identities now. We activate the right connections, the ones that match the frequency of the completed season, the people who will speak the language that was developed in the wilderness, the relationships that belong to who we are now, and not only to who we were. We open the doors that have been sealed by disbelief, by unworthiness conditioning, by the disbelief reflex that told us good things were traps. We open them now. We are ready. And I hear the Spirit declaring this over you in this moment. Receive it. Don't rush past it. Rise. Not because your circumstances confirm it, because I have declared it from the place where your story is written. And what I have declared does not wait for visible confirmation to become true. What I have completed is complete. What I have sealed is sealed. Who I have called you to be, you are. Go forward, and do not look behind you. We cover this rising. We cover the new season from the old patterns, from the threshold panic, from the disbelief reflex, from every automatic response that belongs to the hard season and not to what comes after it. We cover the relationships that are forming. We cover the purpose that is sharpening into clarity. We cover the provision that is beginning to move. We protect what is being built from premature exposure, from being announced before it is ready, from being tested before it is stable, from being handed to anyone who does not yet have the capacity to carry it carefully. And we cover the rising from every voice, internal or external, that would use the newness of the new season as evidence that it is not real. It is real. We are the chosen ones who went all the way through the fire and came out on the other side with every essential thing intact. We are the cycle breakers who end in our generation what was handed down through generations before us, who refuse to pass the old patterns forward. We are the ones whose suffering has been converted, not wasted, not overlooked, not filed away without meaning, but converted into a precision tool that reaches the specific people who needed specifically us. We are the ones who held silence when silence was the most faithful thing we could do, who kept going when keeping going was the only prayer we had left, and who are standing now at the other side of everything that tried to stop us. We are complete, done, tamam, arrived at our fullness, and we receive that without apology and without condition. Don't say it yet. Don't close this out yet. I want you to sit in this for just a moment, 30 seconds, wherever you are. Not to perform stillness, just to let the weight of what was just spoken settle into the part of you that is below the thinking and the analyzing and the auditing. You have been born into your new season. The contractions are over. The pushing is done. There is no going back into the womb. This is where you live now, in this new air, with these new capabilities, with the full formation of everything the hard season was sent to produce. It is done. It is sealed. You are complete, and you will never have to go through that again. And so it is. Amen. If this space has given you something real today, if the word you received here is one you want to continue receiving as your next season unfolds, stay connected. There are more words being prepared. They will find you when they are ready, and you will be in the right place to receive them when they arrive. And one more time, if someone came to your mind today, someone who is carrying something they cannot name, someone in the middle of a season that feels like it has no explanation and no visible end, send this to them, whatever way you have to send it. Your decision to share could be the moment their spirit finally gets the confirmation it has been waiting for.